This question asks, which of the following substances is the most soluble in water? The first thing we need to look at is which one of these molecules are polar. So we can sort of draw out the rough structures. Ethane, C2H6 will have 2 carbons and 3 hydrogens on each of these carbons. And it'll look generally like this. And this is not a polar molecule, so it can't be ethane. Now 2-butanol will be polar. It has 4 carbons, 9 hydrogens, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hydrogens, and an OH group. Now, this is an H, this is an OH, so this is polar. So that could potentially be soluble, but it's not very likely. Let's look at, or it's not very likely that it's going to be the most soluble given the structure. Now let's look at copper 2 sulfate. Now that's going to have the copper plus ion, and sulfate has generally a structure like this, where there's going to be a couple double bonds to oxygen, and some of these oxygens are going to have a -1 formal charge. Now this will allow for hydrogen bonding like so with a water molecule. Should probably draw this in a different color. I can circle it. And let's look at propane, which is C3H8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, this is not polar either, so it can't be this one. So the most soluble is going to be this copper 2 sulfate, not only because the sulfate will allow bonds with the water like this, but also this copper is going to be sort of like if you had a salt like NaCl, and because these oxygens are negative, you would have, for example, in NaCl, you'd have a positive sodium that would eventually be able to wiggle its way in between some water molecules with, well, I should draw them out to see what the structure looks like. There would be a negative oxygen, and you would be able to get, you would be able to get some water molecules with the negative oxygen attracted to sodium in the middle. The same thing is going to be possible with copper 2 sulfate here, where you're going to have copper in the middle, and then you're going to have some oxygens bonded to that, and what you would eventually have is some sort of structure like this, and you'd have your sulfur double bonds, and then another oxygen, and this could go to another H2O, and you could have more copper, positive copper ions in there. So that The answer here would be C, copper 2 sulfate.